So we're next to be joined on the phone with Cassy, a regular guest to the Monday Night Community Show. Cassy, as always, it's great to catch up with you.
Thank you very much for having me back.
So, for our listeners, I was just hoping you could sort of introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, my name is Cassy Fry, and I'm a writer, a poet, and a creative blogger. So I basically write for a living. I'm an indie author, so I publish all my kind of own books and my own blog. I do everything myself, kind of DIY, as well as kind of working on things like marketing for clients in the creative sector. So I just basically, I love words. So anything I get to do where I can write lots keeps me very happy.
So how come you ended going down the sort of DIY route and publishing yourself?
Well, it started just through my blog. So that was a hobby to start off with, which then kind of took over pretty much most of my life. And by the nature of that, that's something you can just do on your own. I've been writing for years, but I haven't really started sharing until I started blogging and also using social media. And I just kind of started, as I started doing it myself, it seemed like the quickest way to get my work out there. I've been, like I said, I've been writing for years, but I didn't want to have to wait for any longer. And when I was ready to share my work, for someone else to discover me or to try and find an agent or a publisher, I just wanted to get going, get writing, and put as much work out there as possible. And also, I love doing all of it. So I love the web design, sorting out my own books, doing my own marketing. So it kind of gives me kind of a greater control over everything I'm doing.
So you've written a book. Tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, my latest book is it's actually my first written book of poetry called This Isn't Romance, and it's based on my a lot of my kind of real life experience. I've been writing a memoir this year, and I found it kind of very hard to talk very openly and frankly about my own experiences. So I found I was writing more and more poetry about it instead. As it's slightly easier to hide behind metaphor. And alongside all of that, I met someone and I fell in love with them and couldn't have them. It's classic unrequited and doomed romance. So I put everything into my poetry. I just wrote loads and wrote it all out. And as I shared them on the internet, lots of people liked them. People started getting in touch with me and telling me about their own heartbreak. It's something we all relate to. A lot of the big kind of love stories are kind of doomed romances. So I put them all together in a book. I had so many poems that it seemed like a project of its own. And the book is split into 3 sections. So there's the falling and the infatuation, and then there's the heartbreak and the anger, and then there's the kind of resolution and healing at the end. So hopefully there's something for everybody in there. It includes some of my kind of micro poems, which I post on social media, which can only be sometimes just a few words or a couple of lines, and also some of my longer works and spoken word, which I often share on SoundCloud. So it's a real kind of mix of my work, but it's a mixture of lots of feelings in there. So there's lots of very kind of sweet, uplifting things alongside lots of very kind of gritty, angry things. I try to kind of keep it all kind of clever and a bit cheeky as it goes, but also stuff that really, hopefully, will really kind of hit those heartstrings.
So you didn't necessarily always envisage straight away writing a book. A lot of it was written for online, and you've now got enough content to make that book.
Yeah, I share a lot of my content and work in progress online, and it kind of shapes where I go kind of from my projects creatively. I find that my projects tend to have a life of their own once they get going. So this isn't one I planned. This is something I was just sharing to work through my own feelings, really. And actually, it just worked. It connected with people. So then it became a book. So there's lots of things I've shared online that are in the book, but there's also I kept some things back. So I've got some exclusive poems in there as well. So it's a important part for me, sharing my kind of creative process with my readers.
You mentioned a minute ago that you've also put some bits on SoundCloud. So you've almost turned some of your pieces into podcasts. Is it you reading them?
Yeah, I'm working on reading my poetry kind of a lot more. In person, I'm quite kind of shy as a performer. So although I'm planning to go to more open mics and things at the same time, I want to kind of work on how I kind of read and present my work. And I find that easier to do that either on just through sound recordings, and I put them on SoundCloud. And I'm just starting to do kind of more videos now as well, which I'm sharing on Instagram, just really kind of short readings. And I've started to do some live readings on Periscope, which is really exciting, but very scary as well. So I'm kind of building up to doing more of the public readings quite gradually. It can be a bit scary sharing kind of creative work for the first time, and if you're not kind of a natural in front of an audience as well. But I think the more you do things, the easier it becomes. So I'm pushing myself now to do more of those things. And I'm really interested in doing more kind of poetry videos as well. So that's something I'll kind of look to develop kind of later on.
I was going to say, it's quite nice because, sometimes if you read something, it comes across in one way, but if people read it and then can go online and perhaps hear you, it comes across in a whole different way, especially seeing you as well.
Yes, definitely. It's quite interesting the way people react to my poems. Anyway, sometimes I write something that I think is really depressing and people say it's so uplifting. And then other times I write something that I think is really inspiring and it makes people feel really sad. We all each kind of project our own things onto the poetry. That's kind of part of the joy of it as well, that I love seeing how people respond. And some of the longer works as well, I think they're kind of written more for spoken word. So it's really important for me to read them to people and to have people hear them as well as see them on the page.
So I think you also want to cover a bit about the crowdfunding.
Yes, so I've done all the kind of the writing. I've put the book together. It's ready to be printed. The problem with doing everything yourself is that you don't have that same investment up front to get the work out there. So I've launched a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo to help get the book printed. I ran a Kickstarter campaign last year for my first book, which was 50 Shaded Poems, which was a book of blackout poetry, and that was really successful. So I thought I'd do that again. It's much easier the second time round as well, because knowing kind of how crowdfunding works, it's made it a lot easier. And I definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to get a project out there. Although it's kind of hard work doing all the marketing for it, it's a really good way of getting people to invest in your work and get something from it. So everyone who basically goes onto the Indiegogo and pledges to buy a book is basically pre-ordering a book. So I can then kind of have the money to order in bulk and then distribute them myself. So it's going really well. I'm almost halfway through my campaign now, so it's starting to pick up momentum.
I was going to say, it's interesting to hear that you've had success with crowdfunding, because we do another feature on the community show called Let's Talk Business, and one of the things in that was crowdfunding, how people had found success from that. So it's good to hear someone who's a regular visitor to our show and someone who's worked locally is finding that works as well. Yeah,
I think it's a really good way of funding your work and finding, particularly if you've got quite a niche or dedicated audience. So it's worked really well for me. I also have a Patreon page, which is a crowdfunding website, which is designed for kind of ongoing support. So people who kind of really like my work have pledged monthly kind of amounts, and it can start from it's an American website, so it's in dollars, so you can start from like $1 a month. And so it's no different from someone like taking you out for a coffee once a month. Just help, but the more people that back you, the more you have a regular income, which working in the creative sector is one of the really tough things. I mean, it's one thing to get a project funded, and it's another to know you've got money coming in to help kind of cover your costs and to build your own creative work. So I use Patreon as well. So I think there's lots of different platforms out there, and it's kind of finding which one is best for either your work or your project, which is why I've kind of swapped around and tried a few of them.
So is there anything else you'd like to get over to our listeners?
Only to say that I've got a website and a blog at cassyfry.com, where I, as well as kind of sharing my poetry, I also write reviews about arts events across the southeast, and as well, and share some things about kind of creative process, and also just talk about other creative people as well. So if there's anyone out there who wants to be featured on my blog as well, just send me an email or connect with me on social media. It's always really good to connect with other creatives in the southeast, particularly in Kent.
So just to refresh our listeners, what's your book called, and how can they get it?
The book is called This Isn't Romance, and it's available on Indiegogo, and the website address for that is igg.me/@/thisisn'tromance. You can also find a link on my website, which is cassyfry.com, and also all over my social media, and I'm at Cassy Fry on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm on Facebook as well.
Cassy, as always, thank you very much for catching up with us and letting us know what you're doing.
Thank you very much. It's been great talking to you again.